Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another beautiful Saturday. Let's cut that intro. It is your boy Christian here on How Bored, coming back at you with another episode of The Symposium, where it's just going to be me rambling for about the next hour about different subjects in board gaming. And as always, you know how it's kicking off. We're going to be starting with the board game of the week. Never giving up on this one. Let's go and cut that reverb there before I drown out your ears. And for this week's game of the week, because I know this is a segment that I always love doing just because it's talking about games that I actually love, is Deep Regrets this week, a fresh addition to my collection via Kickstarter. It was actually delayed a little bit. I believe it was originally supposed to arrive in March or April this year and got delayed by about a month or two. But that is beside the point because we are here enjoying it now. I am currently, as of recording this, 6 plays deep into the game, one of which has been multiplayer and the rest have all been solo. And now that one multiplayer game I did was at 2 players, but I do plan to play it at 3 here before too long. And it is actually a game that is on my 10x10 list. And I've had this for all of like a week and a half. I actually forgot to look up the first day that I played it because I got it the day before that. I try to have a pretty quick turnaround on getting a game and playing it for the first time, so I don't have a shelf of shame. Let me see here. So I would have gotten it June 5th is when my copy would have arrived. I played it on June 6th for the first time, and currently as of recording this is June 15th. So I've had it for all of 10 days, not even a full 2 weeks yet. And I do plan on playing it again, actually, pretty much right after recording this, because I'm just very excited for this game, and I absolutely love it. In my research and my build-up for this game, I actually didn't think I was going to like it as much as I do now, especially when I got a little bit deeper onto the research. I saw a lot of people talking about how they didn't really care for the solo mode for this game, because it's not like your standard solo mode. You know, you get a Euro game, and maybe it has like some small player interaction or whatnot. Usually it's not going to have, it's for the solo mode, typically it's going to have some sort of automa or like beat your own score type of system, or there's like basically 3 different modes of solo gaming from a multiplayer development. And this one changed it up entirely. This is like the 4th option, is you can just kind of not like strip the identity of the game, but modify and manipulate it into something else. And I actually, in this case, I don't mind it. Now, like I said, there's a lot of people that don't care for the solo mode for Deep Regrets, and they've gone so far as people in the community have created solo mode bots, which I'm not against. I love a lot of like solo mode alterations made by the community. Some of them do turn out quite well. This one I haven't tried yet. I do want to actually dig into it at some point and really give it a good shot, but I am enjoying the current solo mode in Deep Regrets. Now, if you're not aware of what Deep Regrets is, it is a medium to really like light medium Euro game about fishing, but it's fishing these like really creepy creatures. There's sections of fish. There's fair and there are foul fish. And the foul fish are going to end up giving you regret and driving you into madness, which can affect like end game stuff. It all boils down into like points. But you're going to be getting points based on how valuable your fish are, and you can go to port and sell them to get money, which will then let you buy upgrades and catch bigger fish. And like there's a whole kind of gameplay loop with catching fish, selling them, getting upgrades, catching more fish, and you can kind of keep going from there. And it's going to be over the course of a week for normal multiplayer gameplay. I believe it's Monday through Saturday, or you can start on Tuesday if you want a shorter game. And then like on certain days at the start of them, you'll get bonuses. And at the start of a day, you choose whether you want to be at sea or at port. And again, you're going to be fishing at sea and then at port, selling this fish to get money and then using that money to get upgrades. While you're at sea, there's 3 different depths, depths 1, 2, and 3. And of course, to be able to fish in those depths, you need to be at or below them. So for the example of depth 1, you can always fish depth 1. No matter what depth you're at, you can always fish that. If you're at depth 2, you can fish depth 2 and depth 1. And then if you're all the way down at depth 3, you can fish from all 3 of them. You pick which one you want. And each depth is going to have 3 shoals in them for a total of 9 shoals. And that's just stacks of cards with different fish in them. You're not going to see what the fish are right away, but on the backs of them, they have shadows that will hint at how difficult they might be to catch. There's small, medium, and large, well, small, middling, and large fish, and they're all going to have different values, which you have a sheet, like a little guide card that'll tell you roughly what their value range is, and then you're trying to kind of guess off of that if you want to fish that or not. Because you also have dice that you're rolling every day, and their value is what you're able to use to fish with using lures. And then you can also use those lures to sink lower and go to lower depths. So you can go from depth 1 to depth 2 by spending one lure, and you can go from depth 2 to depth 3 by spending another one, so on and so forth. And then you're spending these dice as well as your value points to be able to catch these fish. Now, you spend a die in its entirety. If there's leftover value from catching the fish, you don't keep it, with the exception of certain effects. You just lose that remaining value. You can also choose not to catch fish, but a lot of the time the fish are going to give you values, but they could also give you some naughty downsides. So you do got to be kind of careful. So that's kind of the gist of the multiplayer game. I'll end up doing a video later down the road actually discussing it. But that's the gist of it. You're competitively trying to fish in the ocean to get higher values and score more at the end of the game. And there's like extra stuff with the madness track and things like that that will affect end of game scoring. Again, I'll cover that in the full video. For the solo mode, though, you scrap the competitive nature of it. There's no automa. There's nothing else. You're not just like this seafaring nut out catching fish trying to make a quick buck. You're going in as a researcher, which I think is actually kind of cool, having that switch up. And you're trying to catalog every fish in the ocean. You're trying to catch every one of them, get all of the details about them, take them back to port, where you can then also get money for them to buy permanent upgrades. It's kind of like a legacy element, with the exception that the fish that you catch will be back in the ocean for the next game that you play. So there are a total of 117 fish in the base game, and you're trying to catch every single one of them at least once and bring them back to port. Sometimes you're going to have to catch them multiple times, because at the end of a week, which is also shorter than a normal week, you're going to have to discard fish whose value is equal to or greater than the value of the regret that you have. And you'll end up drawing these regret cards that'll have values from 0 to 3 on them. And whatever values you have left at the end of the game, you have to discard that much value in fish. So it's really like this catch and release system where like you can catch a fish, but if you have too much regret, you're going to have to get rid of it and you won't be able to bring it back to the port. So you're still going to have to catch it again to actually complete it. You might have all the information written out about it, but there's a box next to it for check marks. And if that box doesn't have a check mark on it, you haven't completed that fish. You've spotted it and you've unfortunately had to let it go. It's now your Moby Dick and you got to go out and try to find it again. And of course, these decks are getting shuffled the whole time. These fish are constantly moving around. So like at first, it's an open world of discovery and you're finding all these new fish. You're like, yes, I got to write all these details down. And then you start playing a couple more times and you start really getting into the, man, I've seen this fish, done that one, caught this one before. Man, this guy again. You do kind of get into that, but I think that's where it becomes kind of more exciting, because now you're really hunting for that special fish that you're like, I've seen him before. I've had the sucker in my hands, but he slipped out of my grasp at the last minute. And now I got to go back and find him again. But at the same time, re-catching fish, you're still getting the value out of them. So it still helps you out with upgrades. So then you start catching more and more and more fish. Like the first game, I think I caught probably like 8 or so fish my first game, and this last one I didn't count it out, but it's a lot of fish. So let me actually really quickly kind of get a rough estimate here. About 28 or so fish I caught in my last play, and that was my 5th solo playthrough. I had caught upwards of about 28-30 fish. It was a lot. I just kept going. I had stuff set up and I was like, yes, let's keep rolling them out, keep catching these fish. It's a great time. And a lot of it was luck. I did have a lot of luck lineup, but that is kind of the thing about this game, is especially in multiplayer, there are a lot of luck elements. It is definitely one of those, you just sit down and you have fun with your friends. You don't expect to take this game seriously at all, because it is so, like, obviously the art is also grotesque. If you haven't seen this game before, some of it is a little bit like semi-disturbing. Like it's almost got like Rick and Morty vibes. for the art style, and then there's also a lot of just grotesquerie to it, stuff that's really kind of just weird looking and off the wall, and that's something I love. I'm a big horror fan. I love weird stuff like this, kind of that creepy crawly type vibes, but in the ocean, and they get weird with some of it, and then there's some things in there you wouldn't expect, and there's some funny bits, and there's lots of flavor text, and it's overall a surprisingly thematic time. Even if it doesn't like necessarily come through in the gameplay, maybe it really does. Like the whole presentation of it brings you into that theme and almost forces them to tie together. But at the same time, elements of the gameplay do kind of also fit into the theme a little bit, just in somewhat of a way, especially with like stuff like the madness. There's some pretty fun aspects to that. And overall, I think it's just it's a fun time. I'm really loving it. I definitely look forward to playing it more, especially at multiplayer, but I'm still really enjoying my time with the solo mode of going through and cataloging and discovering all these fish. And it's actually really good for playing the game at first when you're not familiar with the fish, because then you start to get exploring and seeing what kind of stuff is under there, what these fish are likely to do. So like it gets you a little more familiar with the game. And also I think it's a great way to prepare yourself for teaching players, because you're like, oh, these effects that you got to deal with, like there's some fish that'll do stuff like this and you got to be ready for it. And overall, I think the game's very well designed. I appreciate the rule book. There's some spots where maybe it could be laid out a little better, but overall it's been pretty good. Tons of guides for the players, which are fantastic. There's so much player aid, not to the point that it's like overwhelming table wise, but it gives you a lot of the information that you need to know on the fly in pretty small packages, and like distributions and statistics and like very rough, like basic stuff, you know, easy to understand. I'm saying these big words, like statistics, big word, I know. But really it lays everything out for you. You have all of the information that you need to make informed decisions in a way that gives you a really fun kind of push your luck element of, can I catch this fish? Or I know I have enough value to catch this fish, but can I stretch my dollar and make this stuff that I have push a little bit further maybe? And like, it's just, there's subtle push your luck elements to it, but they're not like overbearing. And there is plenty of luck elements overall during the game. So if you're not someone that enjoys luck at all, I think there's still some joy to get out of this game, but I understand. Like, I was someone forever who hated any game that had anything to do with luck. I basically wanted something like Voidfall that was almost purely just deterministic 100% of the time. But I've kind of grown out of that a little bit, and I've gotten myself to be more okay with luck-based games. And this one I wouldn't even say is as luck-based. It just has several luck elements to it. You know, like if I was comparing this to something like Dice Throne, this is much less luck based than Dice Throne for someone that wants like a comparison like that, or Quacks of Quedlinburg. This is much less luck based than that. All of these games still have decisions, but I think Deep Regrets' decisions are a little bit better and broader in what they can do as opposed to those other games. Whereas, you know, Quacks, it's like, oh, do I pull out another token and risk it? Dice Throne, do I risk another roll, or do I just settle for what I have now? You know, things like that. There's a lot more in Deep Regrets to be able to make those decisions and things to manipulate, and there is definitely stuff you can stumble into. You can very easily stumble into a victory, which I kind of did with my first multiplayer game, but it's still like, it doesn't feel bad in any sort of way, because you still got to make enough decisions along the way to feel like that path was your own. There was just interjections in that path. So that being said, let's go ahead and cut this segment now, and we're going to go ahead and talk about the main topic of the day, which is probably going to be a little bit vague from this title, and that is going to be, there we go, slimming down your collection, learning to curate your board game collection and not just collect. Now, we've talked about purchasing in the past in episode 2, and that was a pretty good in-depth topic discussion, I think, about knowing when and why to purchase a board game. This is somewhat of the opposite, in where we're going to be talking about how to keep your collection small and maximize the value. Because if there's one thing I know us board gamers love doing, it is maximizing value to its fullest, to the point that we get analysis paralysis. But hopefully, after some of the tips I bring you today, maybe the analysis paralysis won't hit so hard for this part of your life. So what do I mean by curating your collection? Well, first and foremost, as just kind of a general adage to keep in your mind, keep numbers low, values high. And this is just valuing quality over quantity. This has nothing to do with the value, like price-wise, of a game. Price of a game does not equal worthiness. So it is up to you as the owner of your collection to value your games. And actually, I kind of appreciate what Actual Lol has done in this regard, which is not something I'm going to say often. I'm going to say that right now. I like Actual. He's fun. He's got a good personality. Some of his takes I don't quite agree with, but this one I really personally enjoy. And that is doing, what was it? It's not a fun quotient, but basically an equation to determine a value of how much fun a game is versus how much space it takes up. The smaller a game is and the more fun it is, the higher the value, which is definitely something to keep in mind. Obviously, for me, the fun part of it is more important than the size. Like if I have a small card game versus a really big game, and overall I get more enjoyment out of the big game than the small card game, but that value would be higher for the small card game, there's a little bit of leeway and discrepancy there, a little bit of nuance to be put in, that I think is not accounted for in such a cut and dry system. But it could be something to implement alongside emotion, like getting the mix of logic and emotion to fully make this decision. And what I mean by this decision is being ready to maybe let go of some things. But before we even get to that point, again, keeping numbers low, values high. This ties very much into what I was talking about again in episode 2 with a spending regiment. And that is, or a purchasing guide, if you'd rather. Again, like I talked in that episode, go listen to that if you haven't yet. But following something like that will be the first step in helping you keep a smaller collection. Knowing when to not buy a game is just as important as knowing when to buy a game for helping manage your collection. And this is probably more important for someone like me who's maybe at a little bit of a tighter budget or has a smaller space to work with. There are some people where the sky's the limit for them. They could just go hoard and collect and love every game out there. And to them, I say, awesome. I envy you. I really wish I could live that life. But I do have to, in my current situation, be a lot more careful and considerate about the games that I actually keep around. And that is somewhat of my problem, is that I want to have every game. It's the joke of I go into the game shelter and I'm adopting a game and bring it home or whatever. Like you want to have them all because they're all so enticing. Now granted, there's several out there that I just don't want, period, in my life, but there are a lot of games indeed that I'm just like, I can't afford that space or money wise, so I got to make the concession and skip out on that one. So now we're already past this point. We've started slowing down on our additions to our collection. That's great. How do we go about actually slimming down that number and saving some more space in our shelves? How do we begin going about that? Well, a really easy one that is actually something I've come across from someone else that I know in the community. I'm not going to call him out, but I really like this idea, is that if you play campaign games, do your best to reset them and then pass them on. Whether that be giving it to a friend, donating it, selling it for, less than MSRP or whatever, selling it as like a used game. That is huge. Like, because most people are not going to replay campaign games. There are a lot of times where someone will play a campaign game once, maybe not even all the way through, and then never touch it again. I am not guilty of this yet because I don't really own any campaign games. The closest I have is Rise of Fenris for Scythe, and that took me forever to get through. Like, it was just 8 games, but that took me a while to get through. And granted, I was never going to get rid of it. I knew that off the bat because I wanted the modules in it. But I think because I do have some campaign games coming, and if I never plan on replaying them, now obviously like certain legacy games, they're gonna have stuff that you can't reset, like have you writing on paper or applying stickers that don't come off or whatever. Those games, there's not really anything you can do about. But if you know you're never gonna be able to play it again, or you're just never going to play it again, it's best to get rid of it at that point. You've had your fun with it, you've enjoyed the campaign, you've most likely gotten your value out of it. And it's time to let that one go. As unfortunate as that is to say, and that's something I do not look forward to dealing with myself in respect to campaign games that I plan on getting or that I have on the way eventually. I don't look forward to that. And I'm hoping that with the games that I have coming, that they'll be resettable enough that I can play them over and over again, because I'm very excited about what they are. And I am not shy at replaying campaign games at all. Like, I grew up playing Halo games, and I would just play the campaigns like back to back. It's nothing that I am a stranger to. But those games again where they can't be reset, or I've just got through it, I'm like, I don't want to play this again, I'm definitely going to be getting rid of it at that point. That being said, what do we do about the games that are technically replayable? You know, we just don't want to replay them. They don't have a space in our collection. And the first step is admitting it. If you have a game that's been sitting around, you can pull it out and see the layer of dust on top, that game is probably ready to go. And I hate to say that, because nobody again, if you have the ability to collect, awesome. Some people really just like collecting, and I have nothing against that whatsoever. Go off, live your life, I support you. But again, for someone like me, it's not quite as feasible, and I gotta make the room for it, and sometimes get a little bit of cash back to get other games. So admitting when a game no longer belongs in your collection and getting rid of them is absolutely crucial. And how are we going to know that? Well, there's different methods you can go about for determining when a game is no longer meant to be on your shelf. And of course, you can sometimes just intuit that. You can just look at a game and be like, yeah, I don't need that one. Let's get rid of that. Sometimes you can just look at a game and know. You don't ever know that for sure, but someday you might just kind of look at it again and be like, oh, you're still here. You don't belong here anymore. Maybe you outgrow a game, or maybe it's just not your taste anymore. Trust me, I have had this happen with like several games on my shelf, and I do still have them because I still want to go back and play them again. I have reasons for keeping them. But when I first got into the gaming space, and I've mentioned this before, I started off with cozy games, and that was like all I would play was cozy Euro games. I wanted them to just be as relaxing and as calm and as peaceful as possible. That quickly changed once I started going off the deep end and finding heavy games. Once I started playing heavy games, it was all over. So now I have games on my shelf like Honey Buzz, like Maple Valley, Creature Comforts, several other cozy games that I've just got there, and I'm like, I don't feel the urge to play them as often anymore. And I've kind of been thinking about maybe getting rid of Creature Comforts or Maple Valley, but I haven't been able to let them go just yet, and I still play them every now and then. Honey Buzz is one I'm never going to get rid of. I've determined that one a while ago. I still love Honey Buzz, despite the fact that I've lost my love for the cozy games. I still like them, but I've lost my like deep love for them. But Honey Buzz holds a very special place in my heart, and I'm not letting it go for a lot of reasons. And the Creature Comfort games probably will remain as well for very similar reasons. I do owe them a lot for where I am now. But if they didn't have that sentimental value to them, they probably would have been gone. They would have been gone from my collection right now. One of my big rules of thumb is that I set a time frame. If I do not play a game within 6 months, like any 6 month frame, if it's 6 months from the time I've last played it to the day I'm looking at it, it's time for it to go. And I'm usually not that harsh on it. Obviously, I'll give it some leeway most of the time, or even if it's getting close to the 6 months and it's not quite there yet, I might look at it and be like, yeah, that's not happening. And there are obviously exceptions to this. Like I mentioned in one of my last episodes, I think it might have even been the last one, that there are games you sometimes have around for very specific situations. Something like Blood on the Clock Tower. Like you're not going to convention all the time. You're not in these big groups all the time, but you like having that game there for those situations because you know how good of a time it's going to be when it does come out. And I can support games like that too, to a degree. But I will also say that not every occasion needs its own board game. Like you don't need to have a game for like separate games for the pub or separate games for home, or like you can play most of these games you can play just about anywhere, and you can kind of stretch them out. Now there's obviously exceptions to that. I'm not going to say go and take Voidfall to the pub or to the brewery or anything. And I'm also not saying to like there's so many contradictions to that, I'll say that, but not every situation in life needs its own board game. There are a lot of situations where games can overlap. Like I can go grab a game like Things and Rings and I can play that at home. I can take that to a hotel. I can take that to a restaurant. I can take that to the pub. I can take that like just about anywhere. And I don't need to have a different game for each of those locations. But again, there are games that are sometimes really niche in those situations. Like I will use another example of my collection, Thunder Road Vendetta, one of my favorite games of all time. I hardly ever get to play that game because of its player count restriction, and you can play it at 2 players, but I don't really see it being as like I've played it a few times at 2 players, and I don't really think it's all that interesting. There's too much room between players, and the whole point of the game is chaos and havoc. And it just doesn't deliver that with anything less than 3. And even 3 sometimes is pushing it, but I've had some really good moments at 3 players. No, that is the type of game that's going to shine at 4 to 5 players, which doesn't really happen for me like at all. I've played it once at 4 players to my memory, and it was a great time. That's the thing about it, is I absolutely love it at 4 players. And that's why it's one of my favorite games of all time, because it is so much fun. I just am not able to play it all that often based on restrictions and having to be in certain situations for it. So I understand having those games around for those moments, but I don't like need 5 different games to fill that gap. You know, like I have that and Wonderland's War, which basically fits in those situations. Other than that, I don't really get games that are going to play higher or better at higher player counts. Libertalia was another one of those, but that one I also talked about last week, and that one is one that I have thought about getting rid of because of exactly this. Because I have so many things, well, not so many things, but I already have a couple of other games in that category that I would prefer to play in those situations. The other thing that Libertalia has over those other 2 is that it can go up to 6 players, whereas Wonderland's War and Thunder Road Vendetta both cap at 5. So I also have a soft spot for Libertalia. My wife likes it, so that it makes it so much tougher to get rid of. And that's something like this is also that I'm coming to grips with myself and still kind of pushing through my own journey of. So we might have to do a revisit episode later down the road and talk more about this topic as I come across more ideas. But with what I have right now, it's already been a huge help in admitting that a game, again, no longer belongs on my shelf. And as always, in a world with too many choices, be selective. That is another thing that I am struggling so hard to come to grips with. But again, with that purchasing guide, if I don't think a game is going to be in my top 10 of all time, I'm not buying it. Now, once I have a game, if it doesn't end up in my top 10, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be cut. I mean, right now I'm at 170 games, and a lot of that is like, you know, I have a bunch of Bunchai games, a bunch of Final Girl, several expansions. So it's closer to probably like 120 games. But for me, that is still probably quite a bit more than I want. And I'm in the process currently of implementing a lot of these methods here. And part of that is knowing your current circumstances and curating your collection of that with a few potential outliers. So with this, again, I've talked about money and space. You need to make sure that you're not going over on those. If you're going into debt to buy board games, that's not a good thing. If you're overcrowding your living space or any space whatsoever with board games, it's also becoming a problem, and something needs to be tapered back there to make stuff more feasible. It has to be done in moderation with reason. Anything in excess is going to cause problems, and I don't want a hobby to end up getting into someone's life so bad that it causes issues around them. And That is, I am trying to avoid that in myself as well, because I know that it is very possible for me to go down the rabbit hole someday and just have that kind of early life crisis. And I mean, out of all the crises I could have, that wouldn't be the worst one, but I would rather just not have one at all if I can help it. And it's learning that extra bit of self-control that's been very difficult. But now, aside from money and space, with knowing your circumstances, you also got to know and understand your average play setting. Are you often playing alone? Are you often with friends, maybe like 2 or 3 other people, so you're at that 3 to 4 player range? What does your average play experience look like? You know, if you've got a group of 4 to 6 people, you're not going to be out there buying like Gentle Rain and Final Girl, because you're not bringing that to the group to play together. Those are solo games. Vice versa, if you're a solo player, more like I am, you're not going to be going out and buying all these party games that need like 8+ players to be anything enjoyable. So saving yourself needless things like that. If you have games in your collection that you look at your life and you're like, I don't have this many people to play with, or I never play with this few people, those games might not be right to be sitting around anymore. They're just going to keep collecting dust, and you might be hoping that one day the situation arises, but you also got to be realistic and be like, well, that situation never arises, so it's not really reasonable for me to keep this around in the hopes that it one day will happen. If that situation comes by and you don't have that game anymore, I think that's better than having it sit there and take up space and then having it never happen. This is one of the times where I'm on the antithesis of hope, or like of being prepared for the worst. Like I think that's not even the right expression. I'm struggling to find in my head the one that I'm thinking of here. Basically, this is like the one time I'm opposing the idea of having something. Okay, there we go. Having something and not needing it, aside from not having it and needing it. And this is a case where I would rather not have it and quote unquote need it, because theoretically, you technically never need a board game. This is a hobby. We're all here to enjoy it and spend our time with it as a pastime, as a distraction, as something to bring us joy in life. That's what we're here for. We never theoretically need a board game. You know, it's not really going to come down to life or death a lot of the time. If it's between spending money on food to survive and board games, it's got to come down to food every time. And same thing goes with your space. Like if you have that game and it's never going to come up except for maybe once in your life, it's not a need. You don't need to have that game around. You can let it go. You know, even if that moment comes and passes and you didn't have that game, there's other ways to spend that moment. And ultimately that's what we're doing with board games, is we're spending our time on these to enjoy them and have the ride with them. But you also want to have the best time possible with those, because time is so finite. You want to know that if you're spending your precious time playing board games, you want to put it into as good of quality stuff as you can, something that you're really going to enjoy and cherish. And if that game is really going to bring that much joy, then maybe I could see it happening. But it's just, there's so much other stuff you could have in place of that instead that would bring you a lot more joy in the long run, rather than just that one instance. It's also about mileage. Like, how much are you going to play this game? Are you going to get your mileage out of it? Are you going to get your true value out of it, out of your entertainment and your money and your space? Are you going to be getting the value that you need to out of that game? And sitting down and really truly being honest with yourself. Like, this is going to be a very hard process for a lot of people, I'm sure. It feels bad to buy something and then realize that it's not right to have around anymore. There's certain things that it's a little bit easier with. Like maybe it's easier to get rid of clothes or old books that have just been lying around. With something like this, sometimes for certain people, it can feel a bit more personal and harder to let go of. And I understand that. And that's where we really need to break past our mental barriers and be truly, fully transparent with ourselves. You know, maybe even sit with just a game at a time. Be like, is this game actually one that I need to have around? And again, for me, I love the time frame thing. If I don't touch a game for 6 months, it wasn't meant to be. I haven't thought about it enough to actually care about owning it. It can just go. as well as sometimes maybe you need to actually replay a game. If you haven't played a game in a while, say it's been that 4 months or so, you're like, yeah, I need to try this out again. And then you get through it, and that's when it might hit you like, yeah, I actually don't enjoy this as much as I thought I did. And now I am also always of the proponent to play a game at least 3 times before making a full decision on it. Upwards of 5 would be my preference. But playing a game at least 3 times before making any sort of informed decision, I think, is very important. That first playthrough is all just about learning the rules and getting the basics down. The second game, you're starting to iron out the kinks. And then the third game is where you really start to maybe feel like you're actually getting into it. And that's a rough number. It's different for every game. Sometimes they take a lot more. Like Ostia took me several plays before I really got through. Septima, that was like 1.5 to 2 years before I realized how much I love that game and how good it is. But there's always the opposite option too, or the opposite possibility where you come back and you play a game again after having enough experience with it. You're like, yeah, that didn't quite live up to the expectations I had. And now I'm not really enjoying it. I'm kind of disappointed in it. And it's time to let it set sail. Get out of here. Go on the ocean. Be gone. Obviously, don't actually throw your games in the ocean. I would never condone that. But you know what I mean, metaphorically speaking. As always, again, in a world with too many choices, be picky. This is one of those cases where it's good to be picky and not overindulge, because this is also a very expensive hobby. I would say on average, board games are probably about $80. So this is a very hard average, because there's a lot of small games that are cheaper and there's a lot of really high-end games that are a lot more expensive. So there are kind of like outliers that can really sway that balance a little bit. But I would say most often games are averaging about $70 to $80 a piece. And if you're buying like even a new game like every couple weeks, that can add up to be quite a bit. It really does get pretty costly before you know it. And knowing when to taper that back, as well as get rid of some games to maybe get some cash flow in return, it can bring that average down a little bit and make it a bit more feasible in the long run. And that's another thing I would recommend too. Like if you're willing to put in the work for it, consider, like, if you don't have many opportunities to test games, whether it's playing them on simulators or playing someone else's copy or anything like that, if you don't have those opportunities as much and you're willing to put in the work for it, I think buying and selling / trading board games is a very good method. You can buy used games a lot of times for cheaper, be able to get some experience with the game to see if you actually like it or not. And on the same token, you can go around and sell your used games. A game didn't hit as well as you wanted, and you don't really want it around anymore. You've tried it out, and it's not your style. Then go sell it for a few bucks. Again, you're going to be selling it less than MSRP. You're only going to be getting a portion of your money back, but it's still better than basically having paid full price. You got to pay for kind of a trial at that point, and you got to know for sure that was a game you didn't want, but then you at least got something back out of it, so you weren't completely in the hole. Not financial advice. I don't know your situations. Do not take that as any sort of financial advice of trying to like flip games or anything like that. It's not a good idea. But as far as trying to keep your collection down, if you really want to, if you are willing to put in the work for it, I think that's not a terrible idea to make it a bit more affordable and accessible to try out a ton of games, because it's not always easy to find the right game on the first go. Sometimes you've got misses, or you really got to figure out what you actually enjoy in terms of board gaming. And sometimes that little leap can be the difference, is just trying out a game and actually getting a good experience with it. But if you're limited in your options for being able to do that, I understand the situation of trying to set that up, of buying and selling, or even sometimes trading straight across. Sometimes that can get you better value out of a game, depending on how you're doing it. There's plenty of ways to do that, plenty of ways to get a hold of people or find deals and stuff. Hunting on boardgamegeek.com, or you can find groups and whatnot that will do this exact type of thing and maybe get some advice out of them. I haven't delved into that world too much, so don't take too much from me. Take it with a grain of salt as far as that goes. But I do know that is a feasible and viable method for making things less expensive and easier to manage overall. Again, it does require that extra little bit of work, but it might be worth it in the end. It's something worth looking into, if nothing else. And another important thing to remember when it comes to getting rid of games is that other people have games too. If you're playing with friends, if you've got a group or whatever, other people can have games too. You don't have to own and hold on to every single game in existence. Sometimes it's not bad to pass a game by in favor of letting someone else have it. Even if it's like your copy and you don't want to house it anymore, but you wouldn't mind having it around to play every now and then, save yourself the storage space, see if a friend would want it, and then you'll still have the option to play it every now and then. You can bring it up and be like, hey, you guys want to play that game? This person's got it. I know because I gave him a copy. Let's go ahead and play. You know, you don't have to necessarily like eject a game from your life, but if it's not valuable enough to keep in your space, that is always an option, as well as giving it to someone close to you that you play with, and in the opportunity that maybe you can still keep playing in the future. And that if they end up moving off or whatever, or getting rid of the game themselves, you don't own it anymore. That's not your problem. You've let go of that trouble. You just enjoyed having the opportunity around to keep playing it. But if that opportunity is gone, oh well, there's so many great games out there to play. Why waste time crying over spilled milk when you've got the whole farm right behind you? There's just no point for it. So at the end of the day, this boils down to be honest with yourselves, know, and like really sit down and think with yourself, is this game worth keeping? And go through all those steps. Have I played it in the last 6 months? Is it really getting a lot of value in my house? Am I able to play it a lot? Is it taking up too much space for what it is? Do I actually enjoy this? And if I played it again, would I have a good time? Breaking those things down and ultimately just deciding whether or not a game is fun and if the space it takes up is valuable enough to you, that's what it kind of boils down to at the end of the day. But that being said, we made it through the main segment. Let's go ahead and transition into the final bit of the day here. Yay! And as always, I'm going to pose you guys a question of the day. Now, if you're not familiar or if you haven't gotten to the section before, I do have an email now for this podcast where you can send in your answers to these questions if you would like to communicate, or if you would like to have me share anything on the podcast or whatever. There is an option for you to communicate with me directly, and that is howboredpodcast@gmail.com. Again, howboredpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send in your answers or any sort of feedback or anything like that, feel free to contact me through there, because I know not everyone is going to be listening to this via YouTube. So for my podcasting 2.0 listeners out there, there you go. There's a way for you to get a hold of me. And today's question of the day, before I ramble on that little section too far, is how many games have you parted ways with in the last year? Is it just a couple? Have you not really gotten rid of any because you haven't thought about it? Maybe your collection is just starting out. I'm curious. I just want to know how many people are actually actively getting rid of games. I will say that unfortunately, I have not actually officially gotten rid of any games yet, but I have several that I have lined up to get rid of. Like, they're virtually out of my collection. I just haven't found a new home for them yet is the only problem. Yeah, I've got a few. So there's also a few that I have gotten rid of. It's probably about a dozen in the last year myself, I think is how many I've gotten rid of. So that's not too bad. Anyways, for just kind of the last rambling segment here, I'll go and talk about a little bit of what I've been playing recently. And so far, the month of June has actually been quite a bit rough for me. It's a lot less plays than I'm used to, especially at this point in the month, but I'm working on catching up a little bit. And in that, I have been playing quite a bit of my Button Shy collection. Now, this is actually, I just got a delivery of Button Shy games here a few weeks ago as well, including it was the Dragon's Gift bundle. So it was the Dragon's Gift, Food Chain Island, Nice Cuppa, with a few expansion collections, Lands of Amazement. I think that was probably it aside from the expansion collections, but a good slew of nice solo Button Shy games. And I've been playing the heck out of those lately. Nice Cuppa I've really taken to. I absolutely love the unique card play in that. Well, I guess maybe it's hard to say unique, but it's a cool concept of managing your stress as like with the thoughts that are floating around in your head. And then the expansion collection adds in like pets and sweets and all sorts of other stuff that kind of shake up the play a little bit. I've really been having a blast with Nice Cuppa. I don't know. It's like that weird line of cozy versus stressful. Like it's cozy in a way of managing your stress, like literally thematically and also kind of physically. It's nice just kind of shuffling cards around and having that feeling of like, oh my god, I can really piece this puzzle together. And I've really clicked on that game. I've been loving that game. And I've started slowly adding in the expansions, but I've been kind of taking my time with it because I've been really enjoying the base game. Pretty soon I should be getting my daily weather as well, which is another one I'm really excited for. I'm literally going to play that every day because it's a completely new puzzle every time, and I'm very excited for that. I think it's quite a unique concept that they have for that game, and I'm really, really excited for it. Granted, it's just a spatial puzzle, but with how the puzzle is set up, I think it's what is really cool. Outside of that, though, yeah, I've been playing quite a bit of Dragon's Gift. Food Chain Island has been a really fun one. Like, I slept on that one for a while. I didn't think it was going to be that exciting or that fun, and then I got into playing, and I'm like, okay, no, this is actually really cool. A lot of fun concepts in there, different creatures, different abilities, and you're trying to eat from lowest value to highest value, basically, is the best way to do it. And it's not always easy, but it's fun messing with that grid of animals and see what happens. I need to do some of the variant setups for it. Last Lighthouse, I need to play more. I played the crap out of the base version, but I need to start expanding myself into the expansion collections. I think I've played 2 of the modules for that one. Oh, excuse my cat there. Hi. There's a cat in my office. I'm sorry. I don't know why I haven't gotten more into the expansion for the collection for that one, because I absolutely love base Last Lighthouse, but I kind of got to a point where it was getting a little bit stale because of how much I played it. But now I have the expansion and I can really start diving more into it. I just need to do it. I need to pull the trigger on it. But the big reason I would say that I haven't been playing a lot of board games this month is because this is for my video game players out there, the non-board game listeners. I am a Destiny 2 fan, and for those that aren't aware, that is a Bungie game, the same company that made the original Halo games, made Destiny, which is another sci-fi fantasy game, a looter shooter game, and then they came out with Destiny 2, was it 12 years ago? Something like that. The game has been around for, like, Destiny itself at least has been around for about 12 years, and it's officially ending. It's no longer getting any support. There's never going to be anything new for Destiny ever again. And there's been a lot of outcry from the community given the situation. And there's been a lot of stuff going on. It's been a very emotional turmoil time. And so they just released an update a week ago for this, the final update ever, with so many changes that we've been asking for years. And so I've been playing a ton of that, a lot of Destiny, because it's kind of my last big hurrah with the game before it basically goes silent and the player base just drops off. For those that aren't aware as well, it's also a live service game, which means the company was constantly adding new stuff to it and evolving the game over time. Kind of similar to like World of Warcraft or something like that, where it's constantly being developed, new stuff's always being added. It was one of those, and everyone's been waiting for a Destiny 3 for years, and it's just now we have it confirmed that it's not going to happen. So there's been a lot of pushback. We've been trying to stop that from not happening. We've been trying to make Destiny 3 happen, and basically we're all struggling with coming to terms that it's not going to happen. And I know I'm using a board game podcast to talk about a video game, and I'm sorry for that, but this is a game that means enough to me that I am bringing it up here because it has been very impactful for like the last month. I think is when we found out that there was going to be nothing more for Destiny. Like, we thought we had a whole year ahead of us of more stuff coming out that people were ready to pay for as well, shockingly. And now we're just not getting any of it. We've got a lot of strands left unfinished, and like so many story beats that are just never going to get told. And it's kind of been a really awkward position to be in with a game that people love so much, and we're enjoying what we have right now with the also sad realization in the back of our minds that there's no more to come. Like, what we have now is all that's left, and it's been a struggle for, I know, a lot of other people around me, and like the community around the game, which is not small by any means. It's not huge. It's not like a super large, but it's not small either. And it's definitely been a rough go of things. Again, for my video gamers out there, if you're familiar with this game in any regard, it's definitely made some waves. I mean, it's gone as far as going on. Some of the creators in the space have gone on BBC News in interviews regarding the end of the game and where everyone stands now. And just the effect it's had on so many people is incredible. And I'm not going to rant too much on this because I don't want to get emotional on the podcast. And again, I know it sounds silly to get emotional over a video game, but again, remember, this was something that has been around for 12 years, and I've been there since the beginning. You know, I've had my off moments where I didn't necessarily log in for a season or two, but for the most part, I've been there at least watching and waiting for that next moment for Destiny to be exciting, and I jumped back in like 2 years ago at this point, and I got really hard back into it. I fell in love with it again to its fullest, and now it's crushing to see it get taken away. Yeah, so I'll stop ranting on that there. I don't even know if I really have anything left for this episode, to be honest. That's kind of most of it right now, is that most of my time's being taken up by playing Destiny 2, but I'm going to get back into the swing of things here pretty soon and start playing a lot more board games again. It's been refreshing, really getting to dive this deep into something that I enjoy so much and get a proper good experience with it. I've also, alongside that, been watching Spider Noir, freshly released on Amazon Video, and that's been really fun as well. Just a quick mention there, I've been really enjoying Spider Noir, but that's kind of been my coping mechanism for when I get too rough with Destiny or I need a little break or whatever. I go and watch Spider Noir instead of playing board games. Like, I've still been trying to keep up with my gaming as much as I can for tabletop, but I needed a little break. I could tell I was kind of getting burnt anyways, and this just ended up being the perfect unfortunate time. So anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Again, if you want to answer the question of the day, how many games have you gotten rid of over the last year? howboredpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send in your response there, any feedback or criticisms or anything you have, or just any notes you want to send in. If you want anything read on the podcast, send them there and I'll talk at you. But anyways, in the meantime, thank you guys so much for joining and listening today, and I will talk at you next time. Don't worry, for my YouTube listeners, there are videos coming soon. I promise. I'm working on them. It's just I'm not on any sort of schedule, and I like taking my time so I don't burn out on this either. But I'll talk at you all next time. As always, happy gaming.